Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Stephanie Gause-Culpepper, Assistant General Counsel at Oryx and President of the Dallas Women Lawyers Association, and I'd like to welcome you to the how and why of D&I initiatives, what corporate legal departments are doing to impact change, and why you should care. We have two main goals for our discussion today. Hopefully by learning more about what major corporate legal departments are doing to improve diversity and inclusion in our legal community by sharing their best practices. Other in-house counsel will be provided with guidance on how to start their own initiatives or improve upon their existing D&I programs. Second, for those currently practicing in law firms, we hope that by learning how in-house counsel and outside counsel can work together, we can make some meaningful changes. We're hoping to provide some recommendations on what outside counsel can and should do to facilitate dialogue and change. So I'd like to introduce our two panelists. First, we have Jennifer Jones. She is Managing Counsel in the Labor and Employment Group at Toyota Motor North America. Jennifer is responsible for providing legal advice and counsel to Toyota Dallas headquarters HR operations and to Toyota Manufacturing's Mississippi HR operations. She assists with labor relation matters across all of Toyota North America manufacturing facilities and is the internal subject matter expert on trade protection and related confidentiality issues. Jennifer sits on Toyota Legal Department's Diversity Committee and has been very involved in discussions about ways we can improve diversity and inclusion in the legal profession. Welcome, Jennifer Jones.
Thank you.
Next, we have Jennifer Evans Morris. She is the Vice President and Associate General Counsel at AT&T, where she's responsible for company litigation. Jennifer manages a 52-person team that covers 37 states. Prior to joining AT&T in 2014, she was a partner at Dallas law firm Carrington Coleman. Jennifer is a frequent CLE speaker and has, including issues on women and minority-owned businesses, which we'll get to later. Jennifer is very committed to her community and has provided leadership to a variety of organizations that help women and children. She was the chair of Community Partners of Dallas, served on the board and does serve on the board of Dallas Women's Foundation, and she's also the former Texas Young Lawyers Association president. Welcome, Jennifer Morris.
Thanks, Stephanie.
So thank you both for joining me today. I thought I would start our discussion by just setting the table about why we're here to talk about diversity, why it's important. And really, it's relatively simple. Each person has value and each person deserves an equal opportunity. But more than that, research shows that diversity makes us more innovative and enables better decision making. Frankly, the legal work product is better when we have teams that reflect diverse backgrounds, life experiences, and perspectives. Separately, we also have a legal obligation, an ethical obligation as lawyers. We have a special obligation to work towards a more just, inclusive, and diverse society and improve race relations in our legal community and in our places of employment. However, despite the clear benefits of diversity and despite the US continuing to become a more diverse population each year, progress in the legal profession has been slow. And unfortunately, we've seen very small gains from women and almost none for minority groups over the last 10 years. So quickly, I just wanted to share the latest statistics. Let me share my screen. So today, 64% of all lawyers are male and 36% are female. In other words, male attorneys still outnumber female attorneys by about a ratio of 2 to 1. And when you're looking at partnership in a law firm, there's a further disheartening picture. In 2018, women comprised only 19.5% of equity partners and about 30% of non-equity partners at the nation's largest 200 firms. That's about a 3% increase of equity partners from 12 years earlier. So American Lawyer reports at this rate, women will achieve gender parity in equity partnerships in about 160 years. Next, looking at race and ethnicity, Nearly all minorities are underrepresented in the legal profession compared with their presence in the US population. For example, 5% of all lawyers are African American, the same percentage as 10 years earlier. Uh, the US population has 13.4% African Americans. Similarly, with Hispanic and Asian lawyers, they are vastly underrepresented. Further, I need to point out that women of color must grapple with their own separate set of unique challenges that largely remain disregarded. There's even more discouraging statistics for women equity partners that are minorities, with only 2.8% of equity partners in big law being women of color. And just to touch on one quick counter argument that's continually brought to us as to why there's a lack of diversity, law firm diversity does not seem to be a pipeline issue. In fact, women are still constituting half of law school graduates, people of color constitute a quarter of law student graduates, and people of color and women make up 45 to 25% of law firm associates. So enough with the statistics. Let's turn it over to what can be done about this. And I'm so pleased to have some major in-house counsel here with us today, because a good number of in-house legal departments have been investing in initiatives to help increase diversity with their partner law firms. The idea is by leveraging their purchasing power, they can advance diversity in their selection of outside counsel. And really, it's an important opportunity here because the majority of US lawyers, 75% in fact, are employed by law firms. So I'd like to turn to our panelists. Again, mention that our goal here today is to learn what your respective companies are doing with the hope that other in-house legal departments can easily emulate it. So first, Jennifer Jones, can you provide me some background on your company's, Toyota's D&I program?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Stephanie. So back in 2017, I believe, maybe a little earlier, we started a diversity committee internally to the legal department. We have 16 members of the committee that represent attorneys and support staff across various practice groups. We thought that we shouldn't just hear the attorney perspective on these issues, and that we should invite support staff, paralegals, administrative assistants, so on and so forth, to join the discussion. And it's been very productive. Our mission as a committee is to promote ideas and activities and initiatives to further the spirit of diversity and inclusion. So we engage our partnering firms in conversations and trainings about D&I. We share best practices to recruit, support, promote, and retain attorneys and professionals with diverse experiences and attributes. Our goal is really to work collaboratively with our partnering firms to brainstorm ways in which we can move the needle. I know we've been talking about this for so long, but as you've shown in your previous presentation, Stephanie, we've not moved the needle very far on these issues. So we're challenging our partnering firms to improve their current D&I efforts, challenge the status quo, figure out what's working, what's not working. Let's not continue to do the same things that we've done in the past because they're not yielding meaningful results. So that's sort of like the overview of the committee. Some of our activities. So we meet monthly to talk about various countermeasures and activities that we can engage in to help improve D&I amongst the legal profession. Back in 2017, we circulated a survey of about 57 questions to our partnering firms to capture their diversity data over a 20-year period. We wanted to see, how much progress had they made from 1997 to 2017. Our goal is to repeat that survey every 2 to 3 years, and we're in the process right now of refreshing the survey to recirculate. So, after we captured that data, we met individually with each firm to talk about, what the data showed. A lot of firms were very surprised when they were faced with their numbers, like the way that we aggregated it and presented it to them, and they can see the progression. A lot of them, for a lot of them, it was an eye opener. So we spent approximately 2 hours, if not more, with each firm, just again, culling through the data, talking about what's worked, what hasn't worked, discuss their diversity numbers as compared to their peers, the others in our partnering firms. You know, how are you measuring up to the other firms that we work with? And how can we work together to improve? So the goal is not to just lay all of this in our firm's laps and leave it there. We want to partner with them and figure out ways that we can improve in this area. We also host thought leadership series where we email different articles to our partnering firms. We solicit their feedback on them. So articles like implicit bias, the importance of building inclusive environments and culture, challenges faced by women and minority partners, just to name a few. So again, this is not a one and done. This is a continuous discussion that we're having with our firms, because as we go throughout this, we're learning things along the way and trying to figure out ways to improve. Another thing to mention is that we've had in-depth, candid conversations with the relationship partner and firm leadership. You know, this has to be a top-down approach. You can't have the diversity committee just being some ancillary committee within the firm that no one really values, or no one looks at the progress the committee is making. We need firm leadership's in-depth involvement in these efforts in order to make change. So we asked our relationship partners and firm leadership, you know, identify a challenge that they want to focus on. Like, what do you want to see change? And explain the metrics they will use to measure their progress. And we also wanted them to provide their personal D&I commitment statements, just so that we can hold them accountable as we continue these discussions. So, you know, that's overall what we're doing in this space. We have been very productive in seeing some change. The conversations we've been having with the partnering firms have been very productive, and we're looking forward to continuing the discussion.
That's great, Jennifer Jones. And tell me, I can't remember if you mentioned what year or how long ago did you start, or did Toyota start their program within the legal department?
So 2017 is where we really got focused. I mean, we've always had a culture of fostering diversity. I mean, when you look at the Toyota legal department, it's very diverse. But in terms of culling together this committee and starting looking at this data from our partnering firm, started in 2017.
Right. No, I think that's just, to me, it was important to mention, just as so that's only 3 years ago, which for me, it's something that you may have thought, oh, this is something people have been doing, 10 plus years. So it's never too late to start. I think that's really just, you guys are just frankly getting going as well. And so it should encourage people that this is something that you're not too far behind. It's not too late. You can always
For
get
sure.
one started. So
Absolutely.
and Jennifer Morris, how about you from AT&T? When did your company start their program? What are some initial steps that you took to start a program in-house?
Yeah, so we were one of the companies that started about 10 years ago. And so, I mean, it started less formally than it exists now, but with buy-in from our leadership, and then engaging attorneys within the department who were interested in the issues. Pretty quickly, the committee was given budget, which I think if you are someone out there thinking about starting up a D&I committee, the two critical components, I think, to get right away are leadership buy-in and dollars, if you can get them. I know they're hard to come by these days, but some amounts of dollars, just the commitment from the company. We have 4 core focus areas or pillars, and those are attorney engagement, the pipeline, supplier diversity, which includes firms and others. Obviously, our companies has a commitment to supplier diversity company-wide, and then sponsorship and bar associations. So we've broken up the D&I committee into those 4 sub areas, plus a newsletter subgroup.
Okay, great. And let's start with you, Jennifer Morris. What type of information and data are you looking at to support your efforts of D&I?
Yeah, I mean, specifically to supplier diversity, we're looking at, and I'll talk specifically to law firms and legal vendors. We look at what certified diverse firms. So how many of our matters are we hiring certified diverse firms for? We're looking at how many diverse timekeepers our firms are using, and whether those timekeepers are taking lead roles, whether they're lead counsel or taking lead roles on the advocacy side or the deal side. Sorry, we had a break there.
No, that's okay. And how do you gather the data?
So we've got a system called Time Metrics. I'm sure everybody has some sort of system. And so as we bring in new firms, we ask the firms to provide diverse information for each timekeeper. So we're able to collect it that way. And then that we get reports that each week or each month, however we want to receive them, give us information, percentages of the amount of cases we've received and who we've awarded the work to, the amounts of spend to diverse firms. You guys may know we have a program called a Preferred Counsel Program. So we have about 50 law firms that are in that program. And our general counsel, David McAtee, from the very beginning when he started this program 5 years ago, said he wanted to half sort of national bigger firms and then half diverse, certified diverse firms. And we've kept to that. So it's about 25-25. And that's where we pull most of our work from. Okay,
great. And going back to you, Jennifer Jones, so you'd mentioned this, you put together these surveys. We talked earlier about the questions that you had. How did you come up with those questions? Were you guided by this ABA model survey, or what was your method?
Yeah, we were definitely guided by the ABA model survey, and I think some others, maybe BALT or some others, but we tweaked them as well to fit the needs that we had and what we were specifically looking for. But for the most part, we're assessing, the progress made amongst marginalized groups. So, people of color, women, veterans, disabled, LGBTQ, just looking at, to the extent their employees have identified as such, we're looking to see, how have they advanced in that area? Are they recruiting folks that fit into those marginalized groups? Are they retaining? Because retention is really the big thing. We saw that, firms didn't have a problem recruiting and getting the people in the door, but around year 3, they were leaving. And so once we were able to identify a problem, then you can try to figure out, okay, well, why is that? Why is that? But to answer your question, yes, we use the ABA model. I think we also use BALT, and then we just asked questions that were, particular to our group and what we wanted to know.
Okay, great. Well, and just quick as an aside, so this is something as in-house at Oryx, when I was trying to develop our diversity program, reached out to attorneys at Toyota and AT&T. Also, my prior law firm, Frost Brown Todd, had an in-house diversity professional, and she had guided me to the ABA model survey. So I'll just share my screen real quick again, just for those not familiar with what the ABA model survey is. So back in 2016, the ABA passed Resolution 113, where it urged legal service providers to expand and create opportunities for diverse attorneys, and really urged what they called the buyers of legal services to direct a greater percentage of their work and spend towards diverse attorneys. So with this resolution, from that really came this diversity survey. And it was something that, to be a part of it, the general counsels had to sign on, and they would support this pledge that a significant portion of their legal services would be given to diverse attorneys. They would ask their law firms to complete the survey that was developed. And then it had to also be, the firms had to handle a significant matter for the company. So it's not just a one-off that you might hand something to a diverse attorney or diverse firm. So I thought it was interesting, and I'll just share quickly too on my screen. These are so far the model diversity survey signatories. So So 115 different companies, some larger ones that many of you would be familiar with. So there are a lot of in-house legal departments that have signed on to this and are really interested in this. So it's just something to, and let me see, I've got this is just one of the sample questions. So this is just an easy way that if you don't have the manpower necessarily in your legal department to develop your own survey, this is an example of something that you can pull. It's available on the ABA website, and it's a series of questions. Here's one just with respect to the overall firm demographic profile. And then separately, I found this was interesting. They're also asking specific questions about highest compensated partners and breaking that down by gender and breaking that down by race and ethnicity. So it really can be a wealth of information. It's something that, because law firms are asked by multiple in-house departments to do this, it's relatively easy. They've developed it for one company, they can do it for you. So it's a really easy way to look into what your law firms are doing. So with that, I guess going back to Jennifer Morris, you mentioned, I think you receive maybe a weekly report from management showing you how you're doing. How are you kind of measuring success and reporting and gathering the data that you have?
Yeah, so we do it a couple of different ways. I mean, one is, what success are we having internally on hiring diverse firms? But we also want to give information to our firms about how they're doing. So the second part, I think is interesting because it facilitates a conversation each year. Mm-hmm. So starting in around September, we send out our own survey to our lawyers in-house. And we ask any lawyer that's worked with outside counsel during the year to fill out the survey. And it's 5 questions, so it's short, doesn't take them very much time. And we ask them to fill it out for every firm that they've worked with. And some of the questions are the things you would expect to see: the quality of work, responsiveness, understanding of our business, that type of thing. But one of the 5 questions is about the firm's commitment to diversity, how they have staffed the cases for the year, just general impressions by our attorneys. That survey is taken, and essentially our firms are ranked in order. And the bottom 20% of the performing firms earn a visit with our general counsel and get to sit down and talk with him. We do, as part of our preferred counsel program, we hold back 10% of our fees for the year. And at the end of the year, the top 80% of the firms get that 10% back. The 20% who get to sit down with our general counsel, part of that conversation is their justification on why they think they should get the 20% or the 10% back, even though they are performing at the bottom 20% of our group. And so that facilitates a time when we can really talk about diversity, particularly if that's an area where the firm is struggling. So that's how we measure and how we talk about diversity or one way we talk about diversity with our outside firms. Internally, this is something that I think is becoming more formalized with us. We don't have specific metrics yet that we've given that are tied to compensation for our in-house attorneys. But I can tell you leadership has turned up the heat this year and last year, but this year in particular, on how well are we moving the needle, and how often are we hiring diverse firms? How often are we using diverse timekeepers? And so we do get these reports. They come with our budget report. So I get my budget numbers and I get my diverse spend numbers, and I can see how much of my spend is going to certified diverse firms and how much of my spend at larger firms is going towards diverse timekeepers. And that's an ongoing conversation that I have with my officer. Literally, if it's not every week, it's every other week. Now it's a topic that I have with the people on my team. And I was so frustrated because we started talking as a team about a year ago on this, and I felt like our percentages were staying about the same. And so I told my team from now to the end of the year, 50% of the cases that they hire outside counsel for have to be with diverse firms. And so we'll see how that goes. But that caused me to realize an issue, and we can talk about it later. I don't want to go out of turn. But it's easy to say that and to say, okay, presto, now today you have to, every time you hire a firm, if it's not a diverse firm, then the next one has to be diverse. But as a leader, the thing I have to do is make sure my team has relationships with diverse firms, and that we have relationships with diverse firms in states that maybe we don't. And so that's a whole different initiative that I'm working on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will get to that for sure. But I do want to go quickly to Jennifer Jones. What is Toyota doing in order to motivate firms? You know, we've talked about the carrot or the stick approach. Or do you guys have monetary consequences? Are you focused more on performance? And how do you guys evaluate with internally from an accountability standpoint?
Yes, and this is such a timely discussion because this is where we are currently. We are trying to figure out this carrot or stick approach. I mean, one of the action items of the committee right now is coming up with a proclamation, a diversity and inclusion proclamation that we can share externally, and then one that we use internally. And a piece of that proclamation talks about the measurement, like these metrics that we set. Like we can set them, but what are the consequences? And so that is a discussion that we're having with our department leadership to decide, like, what do we want to do? We can say all of this stuff and put it on the paper. We can have all these metrics, but are we going to pull back? Like, I love that AT&T has already made the decision. We'll hold back. And we've not made that decision yet. And so we're at a point where, you know, a part of us want people to do what's right without there being any consequences or rewards. But we know that, you know, folks need motivation. And so we're still struggling to figure out the appropriate balance. I mean, some of these relationships are long-standing. Some relationships, you know, we have firms of varying sizes. So do we put the same metrics and the same consequences on firms that are of 25 as firms that are 500? I mean, you know, what does that all look like? So there's a lot of different things that we have to take into account. But we are having these discussions right now and trying to figure out which approach to take, but we're just not there yet.
Yeah. Do you know, has there been a firm that maybe is fallen off of your list for failure to comply with diverse initiatives, at least yet? Not yet?
Not yet, but but I anticipate that could be something that happens in the near future. Again, that is part of the discussion that we're having with department leadership. But yes, so not yet. But it's a possibility for sure.
Okay.
Well, and you know, you may not have a firm that's fallen off the list, but Jennifer, I bet you have experienced where you've had, you know, an RFP out, several firms come in for a piece of work, and, you know, the firm that walks in with a non-diverse team or one diverse team member that they stick in a corner without a speaking role, very unlikely that we're going to hire that.
Yes, thank you, Jennifer. Absolutely. Like we've said in pitches where, you know, I don't want to air too much dirty laundry, but to that point, people come with not a diverse slate of people, and it's like, okay, what did you think you were coming to do? We've been very vocal about our diversity initiatives and our expectations, but you're right. There have been firms that have not yet gotten new matters. They may still be on the preferred partnering firm list, but they didn't get new work because of the way that they presented at the pitch, or they had that one diverse attorney to come with them, but they had no involvement in the pitch. So yes, absolutely, that has happened.
And Jennifer Morristow, go ahead.
I was gonna say, you know, and I mean, and we talk about carrots, but there are things that we can proactively do to encourage firms rather than, and I hate to talk about the hold back, because I do think I think firms are committed to this. I do think they care about it. And so there's a lot of really great partners out there, and whether it's partnering on pro bono work, or like we're doing a bunch of work with the Equal Justice Initiative. We just sent out a letter this week from the legal department officers talking about social justice with our firms and challenging them to join us in really addressing racial inequity head on. And getting down and dirty with us on it. And so, there are those things. Jennifer mentioned awards. We have annual awards each year that we give to our firms to acknowledge the efforts that they make, not just the day-to-day work that they do for us and the timekeepers, but the commitment they have to the community and to moving the needle on social justice issues as well. So I think that's an important aspect of it.
Yeah,
absolutely. And just to piggyback on that for a second, we did the same thing. We sent out letters to our firms, particularly around the current social injustice issues, and the outpouring, like the feedback that we got about things that we can do together in this space was overwhelming. And to your point, Jennifer, firms are committed to this. They struggle, we all struggle, and just trying to partner is the key.
Yeah. And I think on that issue of struggle, I've been really pleased to hear from, our litigation officer over worldwide litigation is Joe Tocco. And I've sat in several meetings with him, with firms, and he is conveying to the firms his commitment to having younger attorneys take stand-up roles, taking the lead on documents or motions, and just trying to say to the firms, give these attorneys the experience that they need to become viable partners. And we'll stand behind you. You tell me you want to give that experience to a diverse attorney, I will do it. And let's talk about it, and let's try to make sure, because it's not just about getting people in the pipeline in the early years, to your point, Jennifer, but diverse attorneys to stay with the company or stay with the firm and become partners and become, important trial lawyers or deal makers.
Yeah, and let's stay on that. So what are some strategies specifically, Jennifer Morris, that AT&T is doing in order to develop diverse attorneys? Whether it's talking people up for partnership, or is it intern programs? What are you guys doing to encourage firms to eventually have more diverse partners?
Yeah, we have a diverse internship program every year where we hire diverse 1Ls. I think last year we had 21 of them across the country. We take them on for 6 weeks. We pay them like they would be paid at some law firms, not all of them, and give them good and important work. But we really view that as our opportunity to introduce those law students to the lawyers that we know in town and the judges. Obviously, we're not going to hire brand new lawyers out of law school, but we can make relationships for them. And so that's an important part. And we've seen a lot of those interns go on to some of our preferred counsel firms and now work for us. Another thing that we do just internally is, and this is the initiative I'm working on with my team now, is making sure that everyone on my team has a relationship with diverse attorneys. As I've told them, if you don't have a relationship with a certified diverse firm or diverse attorneys in the areas where you're practicing, then you're not even in the game. You're certainly not going to hire one, because we all want to hire people we have good relationships with. And so we took a look at where our cases are, where we have strong relationships with diverse firms or diverse attorneys, and where we didn't. And then we've started methodically going through and trying to find firms that we can build relationships with. I've got a lot of the East, I've got all the states on the East and the South, and we have 11 states where we don't have relationships with certified diverse firms. So I've gone to NAMWOLF, I've talked to my friends at NAMWOLF, we've identified some. I'm working with some of our certified diverse firms and asking them for their connections. But we're just sort of methodically going through it and trying to make sure we've got the right relationships that we need to have.
And real quick, before we go back to Jennifer Jones, tell me, NAMWOLF, so that's the National Association of Minority and Women-Owned Law Firms, right?
Yeah.
So tell me, that you mentioned they have an initiative, and I don't know if it's something that maybe some of our law firms that are tuning in have heard about. So maybe tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I just think they do a tremendous job, and they really gave, it was such a service to us. But at their annual meeting, you have an opportunity to set up one-on-one interviews, kind of like speed dating, with as many firms as you want to. They have a situation where you can walk around and talk to the firms, but if you agree to sit down with 5 or more firms, then you can have your own table and the firms come to you. So we spent an entire day, 2 different attorneys interviewing firms. So we interviewed, I think, 22 firms. And that was part of the initiative that I was just talking about. We identified states where we really needed relationships, and we invited them firms from those states to come talk to us. And we sat down and we had 15 to 20 minutes per, and it was enough time for me to know at the end who I wanted to explore more time with. So I don't think it was enough time for me to decide if I was going to hire someone or not, but it was enough for me. And so we probably picked, I want to say maybe 13 of those firms. I went out to my team and said, okay, I want you to do sit downs with these firms, have lunch, have dinner, get to know them, get to know their practices, and let's start getting them some matters and see how they do. It's kind of scary to bring in a firm that hasn't done work for you in the past and doesn't know your business and doesn't know how you like to handle your legal matters. And it's also time consuming. And so the other thing I've been talking to our team about is, we're moving work around so that we can invest in that relationship and that time, because it's really easy to just go back to the well and hire the same firms that you're used to, because they're going to take care of you, that they already know your business. There's no training involved. So it takes time and effort and commitment to put yourself out there and work with new attorneys, but we have to do that. We just got to get out of our comfort zone on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And women and minority-owned law firms, that's an integral part of the legal market. Engaging them is just a really important way that we can increase diversity. And I think, Jennifer Jones, you've mentioned Toyota has, I think, a unique way of having large firms partner with women and minority firms. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we do. But before I get there, I wanted to highlight another opportunity. So going back to like how we are developing relationships with minority attorneys, Toyota also partners with DAP. I may get the acronym wrong. I think it's Diversity Attorney Pipeline Program, where we do have an internship program with minority first years that do go on to work with our partnering firms. Because much like AT&T, we're not going to hire a lawyer straight out of law school, but it starts having that relationship that introduces them to the concept of an in-house legal department. You introduce them to judges and others in the legal department, because those relationships are what matter, right? And so we do that. But going back to your question, Stephanie, about minority-owned law firms, we do. We had I don't know if we can take credit for this. We had a firm, one of our partnering firms, who realized that they were deficient in some areas on diversity and inclusion. And so they took the initiative to introduce us to a minority-owned firm. On some of our matters, particularly our labor and employment matters, we have an all-in agreement. So we work with one particular firm. So that firm went out and sourced a minority-owned law firm to partner with or with them and then with us on our matters. And so that firm had some presence in places where we needed minority representation or minority firm representation, like Jennifer spoke about. So some of our manufacturing locations in rural parts of the world or in the South where we didn't have a relationship with the firm, that was our way to establish that relationship. And the partnership has been phenomenal. I mean, not that it comes to any surprise, but that minority-owned firm does phenomenal work. And now they are an intricate part of our Toyota family. So it's that kind of thing. Like, we are open to suggestions. We don't have all the answers. So it took that firm to introduce us to a concept that we really didn't think about. I mean, we knew that they needed to shore up their D&I efforts. And so they went out on their own and said, well, how about this? Are you open to us partnering with this firm? They're under our all-in agreement. It's the relationship that we have, but it introduced them to Toyota and allows them to do Toyota work. And it's been a phenomenal experience.
No, that's wonderful. I will say we had a comment from a couple of people that I'll just mention. So Courtney Harris with UNT Dallas College of Law has also brought up, in addition to DAP that was mentioned and AT&T summer internship program, there's also the State Bar of Texas hosts a similar program called the Texas Minority Counsel Program. She's mentioning that AT&T, Toyota, and Oryx have all been sponsors we'll definitely be sure to share that. I know Courtney's been involved in that program for a long time, and that is one of the programs that we go to as a legal department each year.
Yeah.
It's local, or it goes around Texas, but it's easy to get to in terms of travel. And so if you're looking for a conference to participate in as a legal department, that's a great one. And
Absolutely.
yeah. And then separately, Tara Moxley at the Estes firm mentioned that NAMWolf is actually doing their annual meeting virtually this year. And they're going to do this expo, Jennifer Morris, that you mentioned, where there's going to be an ability for counsel to interview with companies.
Great.
It's fantastic. So that's a great resource. And so Tara Moxley says that if anybody has any questions, if they'd like to participate, and if as in-house counsel, you agree to participate in that expo portion, it sounds like you can get a week of CLE programming for free. So that's a great resource to check out. So Tara's offered if people have questions to contact her and she can connect us. So I'd like to go back, Jennifer Jones, to what you were alluding to. So the development of attorneys. So you mentioned with DAP, what are you, I know Toyota is a very diverse in-house legal department. How are you guys, is it recruiting? How are you retaining? What are you doing internally to promote diverse attorneys?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. When people work somewhere and they see folks that look like them, they are more willing to stay, right? And especially if they see people that look like them in leadership roles. Our GC, Sandra Phillips Rogers, is an African-American female, and she's also our Chief Diversity Officer. So she is very involved in these discussions, and we are always looking at ways that we can improve and make sure that people believe that they can bring their whole selves to work. And so, it's just having these conversations, showing people that you are an ally in this space, that it's okay for them to express their concerns, or to go to their manager to say, hey, I need this development opportunity. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things, but mainly, the environment fosters inclusiveness. And I think that's very key. And then, so that's sort of internally what we're doing, but externally, again, bringing in those interns and showing them, the different ways in which they can practice law. There is no one way, right? And so when the interns come and summer with us in the legal department, they're working on projects across the spectrum, all practice groups, right? Just being exposed. So exposure and relationship building fosters an environment of inclusiveness. And so I think that's why we've been able to retain diverse people over the years.
No, that's great. And how about you, Jennifer Morris, with AT&T? It's such a large legal department, but I understand it's quite diverse as well. How are you guys developing diverse attorneys in-house?
Yeah, so I was just looking for some notes from a meeting we had with our general counsel this week, and I can't find them, so I won't spit out numbers. But I can tell you that it's something that's top of mind for our leadership, and that's important. They're tracking both our diverse numbers on hires as well as promotions. And David has those numbers, as he said, to the right of him at his desk, so that he knows where he is. That's how, if you don't have measurements, then you can't grade yourself. And so I think that's really important. And, this past probably 14, 15 month period really drove home for me how important it is, the role that we play, how important that role is in hiring. I had an opportunity to hire a new attorney, and I also obviously have opportunity to hire lots of counsel. And I had two things happen over the last period that were really meaningful. One was when I was hiring, I probably got 200 resumes. I'm going to say that probably of those 200 resumes, 80% were not diverse, maybe 70%. Mm-hmm. I was just 100% committed to finding an excellent diverse candidate. That was just really important to me. And so, going into that process with that in mind, just being very thoughtful about who I was interviewing, it would have been very easy to just, given the majority were non-diverse candidates, it would have been very easy to just end up hiring another non-diverse attorney. And we found many. Gosh, I could have probably hired 10. So we hired, we found someone that we're really excited about. The other was when I was hiring someone for a case. So I was working with a very large international law firm in New York. 4 older white gentlemen were handling the matter. I inherited the matter, but it came time we needed to hire some additional counsel for, some individual counsel. And so I asked them for their top 10 recommendations for like the best of the best. And all 10 were white men. And I got the list, I looked at it. And so when we got on the phone, they were ready to go through the list. And I said, guys, I have this question. I'm just so surprised. And it was securities work. So I'm so surprised that you guys didn't recommend a single woman or diverse attorney. And they immediately said, oh, I said, is there no one that's at the top of your list? Oh, no, so-and-so and so-and-so. 3 women they mentioned immediately. And I said, well, why weren't they on your list? Like, is there something I should know about them? Oh, we just didn't think about her. And so, like, it's when we're making those decisions, we have to push.
Mm-hmm.
And there's really good qualified people out there, but it's just, it's who you're used to recommending all the time. And so if we force that, and now they know that about me, and of course they're going to be more thoughtful about that the next time.
Right. But you have to say something first. I mean, they may not, and that's been something that in starting this diversity initiative with Oryx, it's been interesting in talking to our law firm partners. It's almost this, oh, I didn't know this was important to you, or, oh, it's, you hope that it's something that people just instinctually thinking about, but it's when you bring it top of mind that this really, as a client of yours, I'm really motivated and I really want to see some change, and then they, jump on it, but you've got to be purposeful and intentional about it.
And you have to,
please.
One quick point. You have to remind your partnering firms, because sometimes we can get back into old habits and you have to just reiterate, hey, this is important. I mean, we had a firm with a 10-15 year relationship who still made a comment recently, oh, I didn't know that diversity was important. And then that's when they started to bring out names of folks that are diverse and with whom we can work. And it's like, man, you've been working with us for 15 years or whatever, and you still don't know that this is important. So it's that reminder, that constant reminder, and you can't have these discussions and be done like one and done. You have to continue these discussions. They have to be engraved in everything that you do. It has to just be, it's not, it takes action. It's not just words, it's the action behind it. And so, I would challenge people to not just have these conversations with their partnering firms one time and think that it's done. I mean, this is something that you have to keep top of mind for them, for sure.
And one thing, Jennifer Jones, you mentioned that Toyota does, that your diversity committee does, that I think is so easy for other people to do, is sending these articles, just forwarding that along. I mean, that's just an easy way to keep it top of mind. Hey, I read this, I thought you might find it interesting. It just reinforces, and it's just as easy as forwarding along an email. So
exactly. And then, the articles may talk about a theme that we heard before, but it may be a different twist, or, implicit bias is resonating itself in different ways now that we're working remotely. We have people who don't feel connected anymore because they are working from home and they're not in the office, so they feel like they're being overlooked. So there's a lot of things that we can learn from by continuing to have the discussions. And just because, you think you've heard implicit bias or some other topic time and time again, the articles have different twists on it. So that's why we continue to share. And again, we welcome the feedback, and firms have taken the time to respond to the article, so that keeps the discussion going.
Yeah. And speaking of law firms, I have found that there's just a wealth. They have very large budgets with respect to diversity. They have professionals that they have hired. So they just have a wealth of information. One thing that we've done at Oryx, just not having as big of a legal department, we've brought people from law firms, their experts, to come speak to us. It's something we're not having to pay for a speaker necessarily, but they've flown in their professionals that are in New York or Philadelphia. These are national law firms. They're very up to buy us lunch and talk about this, and so we can leverage on that. So that's something very easy that can be done by in-house legal departments. So we're getting short on time, so I wanted to ask you guys, we've got, and please, people can submit questions through the Q&A and chat, and hopefully we can get to them. But one question is, for our diverse attorneys that are listening to this program, what are things that they can do in order to use this information to their advantage? How do they build these relationships with you? How do you get to know them? Jennifer Morris, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so obviously this is an environment where if you're a diverse attorney and you don't have a relationship with in-house counsel, it would be very easy for you to develop those relationships. I've obviously told my team that that's their job right now. And so, I think making the time to make sure that in-house lawyers in your area or in your area of expertise know who you are and know what you're good at and what you do is critical. And this is a great time to do that. You're not competing with a whole bunch of lunches and dinners because nobody's going to lunch and dinner. So, a 15 or 20 minute introductory phone conversation, and then, to keep that relationship building, I think is really important. I think, just don't assume that people know where you are and what you do. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, but just figure out what companies you want to do work for, and start initiating some relationships, because I guarantee you most of them are going to be very, very receptive.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure most people want to do work for AT&T and Toyota, but Jennifer Jones, tell me what diverse attorneys listening can do in order to get in front of you.
Yeah, Jennifer Morris took the words right out of my mouth. It's taking the initiative. Don't assume that we know who you are, what you do, what your expertise are. Don't be ashamed or embarrassed or hesitant to step on some toes and just get out there. Send some emails. A lot of times, especially the junior attorneys, they're like, I don't know if that's appropriate. I don't want to be too forward. Be forward. We want you to be forward. We want you to reach out. We want you, you're not going to see us out much in light of COVID. We don't have a lot of bar associations where we're, in person, but, send an email. We all are easily accessible, and don't feel like, okay, I don't have enough years under my belt, or I don't have enough book of business. You can sell yourself just on what you're able to do. And so I think once people feel comfortable with approaching in-house attorneys and highlighting their expertise, it just starts that discussion. It starts that that relationship building. I may not have anything to give you right at that moment, but now that I know who you are, there may be something down the line that comes up that I can then share. Maybe an investigation that I can form out to someone. So, you just got to start building the genuine relationships, get your foot in the door, or virtual door. And I think that's the best way to do it.
Right. Absolutely.
I do have another suggestion, Stephanie. That is, if you're a diverse attorney who's been asked to join a pitch team, and you're going on a pitch and you don't have a role, speak up. You're doing your firm and your partner a service by saying, look, it doesn't make sense for me to be a part of this if I don't have a speaking role. Here's where I think I can contribute, or here's what I think I can do. Be aggressive about that, because that's what we're expecting to see. And if you go in that room and you stay silent, it's going to backfire.
Yeah. And work on your brand as well. A lot of times we shun the opportunities to write articles and do soft business development where, it may not generate anything right then, but it's just the exposure that you get when people see your name over and over again. So it's those types of things as well that are very helpful.
No,
Yeah.
those are great recommendations. And we've got just a couple more minutes. So before I lose people, and then I'll turn to both of you for some final thoughts. But I wanted to note, everybody, we do have MCLE credit available for an hour with a half hour of ethics. And that number is 174-089-582. And I will also put that in our chat box as well. But that's just something that, of course, these conversations are always beneficial, but just as an added bonus, you'll also get the MCLE credit number. So everybody, just quickly, final thoughts. Jennifer Jones, I'll start with you, some takeaways from today.
Yeah, just, want to thank everyone for tuning in. There is no better time than the present to have these discussions. I mean, we see it, D&I and social injustice issues every time we turn on the television right now. And so just continue the discussion. Never stop having the discussion. Lean in, speak up. These are very important issues. And I think together we will make change, but it has to be intentional.
Thank you, Jennifer Jones. Jennifer Morris?
Hey, I just want to thank you, Stephanie and DWLA, for keeping this issue top of mind and pushing on it. I appreciate people who participated today because obviously you're committed to it. I'm a big fan of Toyota and Toyota's diversity initiatives. I've written a couple of the ideas down from today, including support staff in the D&I committee. I know that sounds like a no-brainer, but I'm not sure we do that, and I think it's a tremendous idea. So enjoyed talking with you today, Jennifer, and appreciate all of y'all's efforts.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you both of you. And just to our audience, I hope that by today you feel empowered to really take some actionable steps to improve race relations in the legal community and the community at large, improve diversity. We've given, I hope, some real key takeaways that you've learned from both our panelists who are in-house at Toyota and AT&T with their very robust programs. It's really that we're just stronger together and leveraging off of each other, learning from each other, taking what we can. And my hope is that we're expanding the number of companies and law firms here that are engaging in these kinds of conversations and have some valuable takeaways. So thanks everyone for joining us, and let's keep the conversation going. Thanks everyone.
Bye.